The box was smaller than he'd expected. It felt heavy in his palm, not with physical weight, but with consequence. Inside, nestled in black foam, was a device of polished surgical steel. It was not the crude, intimidating thing he'd seen in dark corners of the internet. This was elegant, almost beautiful in its minimalist, purposeful design. A perfect circle, a sleek locking mechanism, and two delicate, curved arms. It was his cage. "Do you understand its function, Danielle?" Her voice was calm, clinical, as if she were explaining the operation of a new household appliance. He nodded, his throat too tight to form words. Elara, his aunt, and now, by a twist of fate and his parents' tragic will, his sole guardian, watched him with an unnerving stillness. At 45, she was a woman carved from marble and ice, her beauty severe, her will absolute. His old life, the football games, the loud friends, the clumsy fumbling with girls in the back seats of cars, had been systematically dismantled over the last 6 months. His wardrobe was now filled with soft, androgynous clothing. His room had been repainted from a boyish blue to a soft, neutral gray. He was learning to sit, to walk, to speak with a new softness. But this was different. This was final. "It is not a punishment, Danielle," she continued, picking the device from its box. The steel caught the light of her pristine study. "It is a reorientation. Male sexuality is a chaotic, distracting force. It clouds judgment, coarsens the spirit, and anchors you to a primitive version of yourself you are outgrowing. This," she held it up, "is the key to your refinement. It will redirect your energy. The frustration you feel will become the fuel for your transformation. The pleasure you once sought externally, you will learn to find internally, in your own surrender, in your own becoming." The process of its application was humiliating, a clinical and cold ritual that stripped him of the last vestiges of his masculine pride. Her hands were steady, impersonal, as she guided him, her instructions precise. The cool metal felt alien against his skin, a shocking, foreign pressure. The final, soft click of the lock was the loudest sound he had ever heard. It was a sound that severed his past from his future. She held up a small silver key, dangling from a delicate chain. "This is not for you," she said, and with a fluid motion she fastened the chain around her own neck, tucking the key into the bodice of her dress, where it disappeared against her skin. "It is a symbol of my guidance. Your pleasure, your release, your very masculinity now belongs to me, and I have no use for it." The first weeks were a special kind of agony. The constant, maddening awareness of the cage was a physical and psychological torment. Every movement was a reminder. Every stray thought, every flicker of his old instincts was met with the unyielding confirmation of his confinement. He was trapped, caged, neutered. He fell into a deep depression, moving through the house like a ghost, the soft chime of the steel against the porcelain toilet seat a daily humiliation. But Elara was, as always, a step ahead. She introduced a new element to his routine, a small, sleek, pink silicone vibrator. Your body will learn new pathways to pleasure, she explained, her tone that of a patient teacher. The old way is closed to you. This is the new way. You will use this under my supervision to learn about your own body, not as a man, but as something more receptive. The sessions were the most profound humiliation of his life. Lying on his bed, exposed and caged, while Elara sat in a chair nearby, reading a book, occasionally offering soft verbal guidance. Slower, Danielle. Breathe into it. It's not a race. Let the sensation build. She had begun using the new name, and now, in this state of ultimate vulnerability, it began to stick. The pleasure he learned to feel was different. It was not the sharp, greedy climax of before. It was a deeper, more diffuse, full-body experience that left him shuddering and tearful, not triumphant, but profoundly submissive. The cage, once a symbol of denial, became the focal point of this new, strange ecstasy. Its very presence, its unbreakable hold on him, was what the pleasure possible. It was the price of entry to this new world. His transformation accelerated. Freed from the hormonal tyranny of testosterone, his body began to change with a new willingness. The subtle hormones Elara had him on worked their magic, softening his muscle, rounding her hips, allowing a layer of soft fat to settle on her thighs and chest. His skin grew smooth and sensitive. He grew his hair out, and Elara had it styled into a soft, feathered cut that framed her increasingly delicate features. He was no longer Daniel. He was Danielle. She learned to apply makeup with a skilled hand, to dress in the elegant, sophisticated clothes Elara provided. Soft blouses, tailored trousers that emphasized her new hips, and finally, skirts and dresses that felt not like a costume, but like a natural expression of herself. The world outside the townhouse began to see her. Elara took her to salons, to quiet cafes, introducing her as her niece. The male gaze she encountered was different now. It was appreciative, curious, but it held no threat. How could it? The source of that threat had been permanently, physically removed. She was, in the most fundamental way, safe. Years flowed into one another. Danielle became Elara's companion, her protégé, her heir. She managed the household, assisted with Elara's charitable foundations, and developed a quiet, confident grace that was entirely her own. The cage was no longer a torment. It was a part of her, a second skin, a foundational truth of her existence. It was her anchor, the physical proof of her surrender and her freedom. The key still rested between Elara's breasts, a permanent, intimate symbol of their bond. On a warm spring evening, with the scent of jasmine drifting through the open front doors, Elara, now white-haired and frail, called Danielle to her bedside. "Come here, my dear," she whispered, her voice thin but still clear. Danielle knelt, taking her aunt's papery hand. "You have been my greatest success," Elara said, a faint smile on her lips. With a trembling hand, she lifted the delicate chain from her own neck. The small silver key, which had rested against her skin for over a decade, gleamed in the low light. She pressed the chain into her palm and closed her fingers over it. Danielle stared at the key, the object of such immense symbolic power, now hers. She could, for the first time in her adult life, unlock herself. She could be free of the constant pressure, the physical reminder. She could, in theory, reclaim the manhood that had been taken from her. She stood and walked to the full-length mirror. She saw a beautiful, poised woman in her late 20s, dressed in a simple silk shift. Her eyes were calm, her expression one of deep, hard-won peace. She looked at the key in her hand, then at her reflection. She thought of the frantic, confused boy she had been, and the serene, complete woman she had become. The cage was not her prison. It was the very structure upon which her true self had been built. It was the guarantee of her continuity, the lock that held Danielle together. She turned back to Elara, her decision made. She walked to the older woman's jewelry box, a beautiful inlaid thing. In a small, hidden compartment, she placed the silver key. She closed the lid and turned the tiny lock, sealing it away. She would never use it. She returned to the mirror, her hand resting lightly on the gentle curve of her hip. The faint, familiar pressure of the steel was a comfort, a promise, a permanent and loving embrace. She was Danielle, caged and cherished forever. And she was, finally, completely free.